Hi, she's Trixie, I'm Sarah, and this is Our Yarn World, a place where we come share our love for the yarn crafts and everything that it does for us, and we hope might do for you, and how we can share it with one another, because, my goodness, this is a good episode to talk about how crafting can sometimes be a good release and kind of like escapism.
Right. Stress buster?
Yeah, so, today is May the 14th?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we've been really just out of it. It's been really crazy. But it's May the 14th. We're coming to you 2 weeks after our last video. We'll have story time after our normal, our kind of normal video, production, how we normally go through our video, talking about what we've done, what we have going. After we get done with that, we'll have some stuff to share with you guys, but just grab something to drink. We just chose water today.
Yeah, water's good. Especially when you keep losing your voice all the time, so bear with me. I have some stuff to say, it just might be in a tender voice, so.
But here, how about you go first?
Okay, so I was able to finish the Jazzy Parrot Afghan, and it's so pretty. I just love the colors in it. So,
oh my goodness.
So the parrot stripe is, of course, the ones that are already laid out.
Yep.
And then I just added to it. Added my own colors in there that I thought would go with it. And it's just so pretty. And it makes me happy. And the reason I named it the Jazzy Parrot was because one of these other...
Got the parrot yarn in the beginning and the end of the quilt.
And then
like Afghan.
This part was called Jazzy. So I just put it together and I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to name it the Jazzy Parrot because it really looks like a tropical type of blanket.
It does.
And the tropical birds that would be in those type places have those kind of colors. So yeah, it's making me happy right now, and it's a good place to be with all the things that have been going on this month. Happy is a good place to be. Mm-hmm. So, what are you working on?
Oh, by the way, my mom is working on another blanket, and she will be showing that off likely next time that we come together, but she didn't bring it just because it's a surprise. It's really colorful, and it's a little too obvious to show it without pretty much showing off.
I'm almost done with it. I'm on the last color sequence, and I have a special name for that one too, but I'm going to share that next week.
Yes, so there's that. I got an order for a rooster, a hen, and 2 chicks. Like so a family from my sister-in-law for her mother. And I have since last Saturday, and today's Friday, so in a week's time, I've already gotten the rooster and the hen done. I really have enjoyed them. I ordered these patterns on Etsy. So, there's the rooster.
Isn't he cute? And look at his eyes. Isn't he just darling?
And then here's the hen. I know the tail feathers are kind of driving me crazy. I know that that's probably just creator fluff because... But I think it looks good. It's hard when you have the pattern, but there's only so much that you're going to be able to fully, like, replicate from the original look of what the pattern photos show compared to what you're able to execute. But I really enjoyed this project. I'm still working on the chicks, but I don't know if I'll have them by the time the next video hits, but I'll just show you where I'm at. I just have, the eyes are in. I'm working on the body right now. And obviously the face is not fully put together yet, but these are going to be little cute chicks to go with the family.
Mom and Dad.
I don't know if I have one of the patterns with me right now.
So you can tell who. Oh.
No. The author is not really listed, I don't think, on here. No. She didn't list herself on these. I'm going to... what I will do is, because these are patterns that I found on Etsy, I will just link them in the description. I will give you the links and then we can link them so that you're able to enjoy them if you would like to. I just would like to say one of the alterations I did make is that with this back feather fan for the hen's tail feathers, they wanted it to be a 12 fan, a 12 stitched fan, so it looked like 12.
Okay.
And I did like 14, 15 because I felt that it sat better. But I feel like I could have done better with altering the pattern a little bit, but I think it also looks fine as it is.
I think it looks good.
But just note, I had trouble with the back, with how the pattern was describing how it was supposed to look. As I saw how the photos compared to how it was laying, it did not feel right, so I altered it by adding a couple more, by having more in the base and then consequently making more on the fan. So it's simple. You should be able to figure out what I mean.
And when we were talking beforehand, she said that Rooster sits with his tail underneath him. And it helps him to sit up, but the hen didn't have that choice. But we figured out that if she put a little egg that she could do underneath the hen, that the hen would sit up too.
Yeah, so when you're trying to have the rooster balance on his feet, his body's not even, so it doesn't balance itself out. But when you have the tail feathers, it helps steady and balance him out. If he were to sit on a solid surface or flat surface, he'd be able to stand up and look like he's standing perfectly.
Yeah.
But with the hen being bottom heavy, there's no good way. It kind of looks like she's just sitting on her butt.
Yeah.
But like my mom said, I'm going to just crochet an egg so that it will just sit right there and it will make it look like she's sitting on an egg. And,
I think that would work.
Nesting. I was not asked to make a nest. I was just asked to make these, but because I want the bigger birds to actually be looking like they're standing up, we're going to just make an egg and just add it in. I'm not going to charge them for it.
Yeah.
It's just more of a personal creator preference. I wouldn't want to do that. And then of course, like the chicks, they're not fully done, but so far the patterns, nothing about these patterns are super complicated, but if any of you have followed me since the beginning when I was doing the Bowser, nothing's going to be as complicated as that thing. And
there was a lot of parts to that.
Well, I'm not going to complain. The pattern was free, and that's part of the reason why it was complicated, because it came with how it looked in the end. It didn't have, and it had written instructions as to how it was constructed, how it was assembled, but the issue was that there was no photo aid or video aid, so with some of it was figure it out. And again, it was free, so I can't really complain too much, but at the same time it was frustrating. And when I buy a pattern, you would assume that would have...
They would make it as easy and simple as possible.
And this lady has definitely done that. I am very, very, very almost positive that it's the same creator for both of them, just because the rooster was its own and then the hen and the chicks were their own pattern. And they were a UK pattern. They did have some translations to US, or like with the one pattern that did not, they had a chart that indicated what the equal to, so it was written in UK crochet symbols, and then or abbreviations, and then it would have a chart that would equal out to what this abbreviation means in UK to what it translates to in the United States to what it translates to also in Dutch. So it had it had a three-way chart.
Yeah, that's really good.
Luckily there was that, and it was pretty simple to follow. Like, in my head I could like put it together, but like it can be hard because you're seeing a DC, and for us that's a double crochet, but for them it's the same as a
triple.
No, it's the same as a single crochet.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's just the simple differences, but it's kind of like the difference between soccer and football for them. Like, it's just a difference in that sort of thing. So that's what I've been working on. I'm hoping to still have them when we do our next video, so you can see them all at the end. But I was hoping to have these chicks done, but life kind of got a little crazy, and I would have had them done yesterday had I not had some things take priority.
Right.
But to our story time.
Yeah. So my husband's mom died on May 4th, and it was unexpected, and she died on a Tuesday morning at 3 a.m. in the hospital in ICU. But this all started the Friday before. When my husband brought her mail to her on Thursday, she was fine. She was walking around. She was doing fine. There was no indication she was sick at all. On Friday, he got a call at work and said, you need to come. Your mom's really, really sick. And so on the way home, he called the ambulance. And just to make this a little bit more complicated, Sarah and I were going to get one of her cars, and we saw him on the highway trying to get home to his mom, and we didn't know that any of this was going on. We just kept going down the highway to go get her car, and we didn't know. And so we got home, or I get home and find out that she had gone into the hospital. They had her in the ER, which diagnosed her with pneumonia, which she never had. Later on, she had been so disoriented, her heart rate was down to in the high 30s. Her blood pressure was way low. She was very out of it, couldn't barely speak. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And so they just started doing stuff, and when they did a whole body scan, a PET scan, I believe it's called, they found that her potassium
levels were extremely high, and she had potassium poisoning.
But I can't remember what they had found on a PET scan that indicated that. Anyway, her electrolytes were out of balance. She was dehydrated, and her potassium was within normal levels is 0.3 or 0.03 to 0.05. She was 0.08. So she was taking medicines that were overlapping and producing more potassium than her body needed. And because of that, it was taken away from other organs that she needed. And so her organs started shutting down. When they decided to put her on dialysis that night, after she got into the ICU, her body
went into cardiac arrest.
She crashed, and they worked on her for 18 minutes. That's an extremely long time to work on somebody whose heart just doesn't want to beat anymore. They got her back, but they had to put her on a ventilator and life support in order for her to keep going. They were trying to decide what to do, and days upon days went by, and hour upon hour, it was agonizing to the children of this woman who had done everything for them, and they didn't know what to do for her. And what ended up happening was they tried to do another bout of the dialysis, and her blood was clotting, and it wasn't able to do it, and which was what happened the first time. Her blood clotted, so they tried it on the other side the second time. The blood clotted. There was nothing else they could do. So in the middle of the night, they called. My husband got a call at 1 a.m. from his sister. Said, I'm coming to get you. They want us up at the hospital. Our brother's going to meet us up there. And the doctors basically said, there's nothing else we can do. We'd like to take her off life support and see what happens. And they decided that that would be okay. And they decided that there was going to be a DNR. And when that happened...
When they took her off the ventilator.
Within 5 minutes she was gone. And I found out later that my sister-in-law said she never even took a breath. Her lungs were no longer working, and her heart wasn't beating on its own, and she never took a breath. And within 5 minutes she was gone. And so he came home, and they decided, what had to happen next. I mean, my mother and father-in-law had their funeral arrangements already made. All they had to do was go there and figure out things from there. And so we had the funeral on the 7th of May, and which was 2 days before Mother's Day. And it was just the hardest thing for each of these kids to go through. They just lost their mom. Our pastor was great. He did a good job with the service. Not having known anyone, but my mother and father-in-law had gone to church with us a couple of times, and so they respected him, and it was very, very nice. But all that to say, it's a hard thing losing someone. He had just lost his father 7 months prior, and actually 1 day less than 7 months, she was gone too. And so, and I had lost my father within that same time period too. And so it was, losing 3 out of the 4 parents in a 7-month span or 8-month span is a very hard thing to go through. And we're just reeling from all these things happening. So for me, that's why I've been crocheting so much. And this last couple of weeks, while we've been apart, I have been working on this new blanket like crazy, because it's just something to do while you have no idea what else to do. I could not help my husband make these choices, and the stupid part about all of this is those kids should have been together up at the hospital making decisions, but only one person could go up there because of the coronavirus. And so the sister, who's the youngest, but who also takes care of all the financial situation and all the things, she was the one to go up there because she just couldn't stay away. My husband kept telling her to go home, take a break, go home, take a break, and she couldn't do it. And I know that feeling. When I was going through this with my own grandmother, I could not leave. I could not leave. When my grandfather was dying, I could not leave. When my son was in the hospital with a desperate situation, I could not leave. And I knew the desperation that she was going through. And not knowing if her mom was coming back to her, she had to stay. And I kept telling my husband when he got off the phone with her, don't tell her to come home anymore. There's nothing in her that can do this. She has to stay until she can leave with her own mind saying it's okay. If you keep telling her that she needs to go home, it's going to make it worse. And so they were all together when their mom died. And that was a good thing. The doctors allowed all 3 of them to be up there. When it first began and when it ended, they were all 3 together. And they're all together cleaning out the house and doing all that stuff. And nobody's fighting and everybody's getting along, and it's so wonderful. But for me, the crochet has held me together while I couldn't do anything to help. And my husband is the kind of person who likes to help other people but doesn't like being helped himself. He will ask for help if he absolutely needs it, but he feels like he needs to do this on his own. I respect that. But I'm there for him. He knows that. But the crochet has helped me because she's been my mom too for the last 25 years. And it's been a real hard thing to go through. And what's really, really nice though is that I know from all indications that she's with God right now. So is my father-in-law. They were able to get saved within the last couple of years. And so we'll see them again when the time is our time for us to go. So that's my story time at the present time. It's been a hard couple of weeks. This May has not been one that I would cherish for me, but I mean, especially when my birthday is right around the corner, and May is usually a happy time for me. But you know, if she wasn't going to really be with us anymore, if she was just going to be a vegetable, she wouldn't have wanted that. She wouldn't have wanted to live on machines. And so I think they did the right thing, and I think that it was the right thing for them as well. They had to let go. She wasn't there anymore. She wasn't there since that 18 minutes. And I think the doctors did everything they could, and they did the best they could. There was just a situation that just wasn't going to be rectified. So, and how are you dealing with it?
I'm okay. I mean, it's hard because it's different for me. You know, as the grandkid, I'm not saying that she wasn't close, because that's farther from the truth. But it affects me more because I'm seeing my parents mourn. You know, it's not that I'm not mourning, because I am, but as someone who also feels other people, what other people are going through, I sympathize, I empathize, I have a hard time being around people that mourn, because it's very hard for me to grieve when other people are grieving. Like when the current grandma that has passed, her name was Jean. My grandma that she was referring to, that when she was passing, she couldn't labor, her name was Millie. When she was passing, there was a lot of different moments that I just couldn't break, because even though I was really close to her, just because I could see other people breaking, and I could feel that, and I knew that someone had to be not crying.
Somebody had to be the strong one.
And I'm not saying that I was necessarily a strong one. It's just more of like someone had to be stable.
Yeah.
It's like not everyone could be crying.
Right.
If that makes sense. And I have a tendency of just pushing it away for a little while. And I deal with my sorrows differently. I'm not saying that I'm special. I just deal with them differently than other people. I don't know what it is, but it's not that I don't grieve. It's not that I don't cry. It's that for me, there's an appropriate time to do it, and I don't. Right. And it's not that I'm afraid of crying in front of others, but doing it in front of others, I don't like. I'm not a very physically affectionate person, and I get frustrated when people see me cry. They tend to have this automatic response of, to make themselves feel better, they feel the need to hug.
Right.
And I'm sitting there being like,
don't hug me.
Yeah, please don't hug me. But I guess here's the thing. With me, it's a little different just because she's the one who taught me how to crochet.
Yeah.
There are specific memories that I have with her that none of the other grandkids have, because either they tried and just weren't good at it, or they didn't continue, or they didn't keep going, or they never tried. And I took it and ran with it, and I loved it. I would have never started crocheting had she not taught me how.
Yeah.
And with me learning how to crochet, I taught her how to crochet. And with things that have been happening recently, with going through the house and stuff, I've been... I'm sorry. I'm not trying to yawn.
That's part of grieving too. Is all the sighing and the yawning. It's part of it.
Okay. My grandma made some very, very, very precious things with her crocheting abilities, and one of them was Afghans. I remember when I was a kid, before I learned how to crochet, I was just like, oh, look at this, it's an Afghan. Like my grandma's other Afghans were so pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were all one color, they were all one straight thing. It wasn't like granny square Afghan. It wasn't like my mom's version of Afghans was using a whole bunch of colors. It was just one straight color, and it was just beautiful designs across it.
Right.
And she always did it in white.
Yeah.
Whenever she did her Afghans, she did them in white. And they're gorgeous. And I remember the last week when we were kind of going through some of the stuff, we were just I asked for one of them, and I got one of them. And now I have a blanket from different grandmas. But can you help me?
Yep.
This Afghan, I know it's kind of gonna wash out a little bit, but it's so pretty.
All the different designs in it. All the different elements.
And I just remember as a kid saying to myself, if I ever get to the point where I'm able to be as good as Grandma, where I can make this if I wanted to.
And this is just a lap can.
Yeah, it's not terribly big, but it's beautiful. But it was like one of those things in my head where it's like, if I can get to that point, then I know I'm good. And I don't know. My grandma always told me that she felt that I had went past her because I was able to do some stuff without a pattern. I could do it in my head.
Yeah.
But I always thought that it's taken me till the last year and a half for me to start reading patterns, because I was intimidated by trying other people's designs, not knowing whether I'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough, that's actually what scared me more than actually going out on my own, because I felt that if I did something wrong, it was only me. Like, it was only me to impress, me to figure it out. But to do a pre-designed pattern, I'd have to count, I'd have to make sure, and if I messed up, then I felt stupid because someone's literally taken the time to write it out and make it easy, and I can't figure it out. But like in the last year, I've been able to do that. I've been able to get through that, and I look at this and I can see the pattern, I can see it in my head, I can see how she did everything. I literally were going through it with my mom, being like, hey, this is this stitch, and this is this stitch, and this is this stitch. I pretty much could probably, if I had a piece of paper, probably write this pattern out, but I'm hoping that we can find them.
We're still going through the house, so we're hoping to find those patterns.
But it's just one of those things where it's like there are certain things that are lost in some generations. Like my great-grandma Udall, when she was passing, she gave me all of her crochet patterns, and she made doll clothes, and she crocheted.
Oh, yeah.
And she gave me all that stuff. And then with her, I learned how to crochet to my grandma Garvey. I learned, my grandma Udall gave me her patterns. And it's just one of those things where it's like, granted, I don't feel like yarn crafting will ever go out of style, but in the way that it's executed, there's definitely like a age to everything. It's like there's an age to music, there's an age to art, there's an age to anything that is, because society as it evolves will always leave its mark on the artisans of the time. And so there's just certain different things where it's like, I'm just... You see something and you're able to appreciate it for the time period in which it was made, and the pattern in which it was
that is so intricate. It's got so many different patterns on it.
And I don't know, it means a lot to me that I was able to get one of them, because it really, really, like I said, it's one of the things I always aimed for. Like, if I was able to crochet, I'd want to be as good as Grandma.
Yeah, it's a piece of art.
You know, and this is a testament to her crocheting.
Yes.
This is a testament to
her time.
And
her talent.
And her talent, and how I wanted to be as good as her. I can look at that and be inspired continuously, because whenever I'd go to her house, I'd be inspired by her.
Yeah.
And her, and I'm so grateful to be able to have something that would continuously inspire me.
But you inspired her as well, because I always heard her say, and Sarah can do all these things without a pattern. I don't know how she does it, but she can do them without a pattern. And it was just like, I don't know, but you know, people who follow patterns, they're inspiration to me too. Well, it's just like, wow, it's amazing.
I'm not, like, granted, I'm not over here saying there's anything wrong with following patterns, but for me, the time to completely execute something, like, something as big as this is daunting to me, regardless of whether I made the pattern or it's written, because I'm sitting down, taking my time to complete it.
Right.
And I know that sounds stupid, because that's technically anything that you make.
Right.
But when I look at this, and I literally know that this would take me a day if I literally just sat down and did it.
But it's a sum of its parts.
I know. But I'm just saying, because when James and I were looking at the pattern, he's like, well, we were trying to price out how I was going to price everything out. And he's like, well, how long would each one of these take? I'm like, well, the rooster, the hen would take a day if I didn't have the kids. So add the kids, probably about a 2-3 day span, which is exactly what it's been for me.
Yeah.
I was accurate to that. It took I had a day margin because I was waiting for the safety eyes to come in to finish putting things together.
Yeah.
Had that not been a delay, I would have had it done just in that time margin. But it's just like one of those things where it's like, I don't know when she made these. I don't know if the kids were born. I don't know if the kids were born. And she had 3, and she was a single mom, and she was
going to school to be a nurse.
She was and then she became a full-time emergency nurse. Had her 3 kids.
She was an ICU nurse at the end.
And she was one heck of a lady.
Yeah.
And granted, she ended up meeting who I knew to be Grandpa. My dad, the kid's original father, and her divorced at a time when that was taboo.
Right.
She and him went down to Texas to live, and she left him with the 3 kids and went back to Michigan. Was like, sayonara. And she finds this house, makes a home, and it wasn't as good as it was today. Like, I've been told that it was in some pretty poor repair.
It was what they could afford at the time.
And when she met who I knew to be my grandpa, they took the time to build it into what it is today. And he helped with the kids, and now the relationship and everything that there were, and how it really marked how my family moved on.
Yeah. It was a nice situation to have them live so close and be there for us, and us be there for them at the end when they needed us.
Yeah.
They were not that far away from us, and we were able to help out in their time of need, and they were always there for us as well. So one of the things that I just want to bring up real quick is, when my pastor was doing the service, he mentioned this verse, and it's one that everybody knows. It's the shortest verse in the whole Bible, but it meant a whole lot at the service, because so many people knew and loved my mother-in-law and were crying. And it's just, Jesus wept. And so I was just looking it up to find out where that is in the Bible, and it looks like it's in John 11:35. Jesus wept. He was asked to come to a friend who was dying. His friend Lazarus was dying, and
he waited.
He waited a day because he knew that this was going to glorify the Father. And when he got there, Lazarus's two sisters just were sobbing and weeping and crying and saying, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. And he just told them, this is all going to be okay. It's just I needed to do this. And when they just kept sobbing, and he just turned and he wept as well. He had feelings, and he knows when we're in those deep sorrow moments. We can be guaranteed that he's in those deep sorrow moments with us, because he felt them when he was here on earth, and he feels them now. He doesn't change. And so when we heard that at the funeral, it was an eye-opening situation. It opened a lot of people's eyes. I heard from a lot of people at that service that they really liked what the pastor had to say, and that he said a timely message, and they needed to hear it. And it made me open my eyes to the situation that Jesus doesn't change, and he's in those deep sorrow moments with us. And it made me feel better that Jesus is with me even when we can't help ourselves. We have those need to mourn another person who's gone on to the next stage, and we're only crying because we miss them here. So
our best man for my wedding is a pastor, and he when he became a bona fide pastor, we saw his first sermon, and his sermon was, he had been a youth pastor for a very long time, still is, but it's like his gifting is very much in dealing with youth. And he has no problem with that, but he wanted to make sure that he was official, like he had done all that he could to give out to these kids by his studying and continue to study the Word of God. But one of the biggest things that they ask him is, if God's so loving, why does all these bad things happen? And they ask him, almost guaranteed that's the one thing that he's asked the most.
yeah.
And I remember going to his first adult sermon, like him actually talking to adults, and he literally looked and he's like, my sermon is exactly on this topic. He's like, because I asked God, what's going on? Because that's something that I question too. Straight up. He's like, I'm being honest. Like, if you're a loving God, then why do all these bad things happen? Why do we have to be put in the pit for us to appreciate being out of it? Like, what? Like, later? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the lesson here? Because some of it seems pointless.
Right.
Why do people live just to die? Why do people just do this just to have this happen to them? You know?
Right.
What's the cause and effect here? Because it doesn't seem to equal out the way that it's supposed to, sort of a thing. And Jesus and the Lord brought him to that verse. And he literally said he did this huge study on this verse and all the different things that people have concluded with it. But then God brought him to Narnia. I don't know how many of you have read the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis. If you haven't, it's definitely worth it.
Yes.
But the first book is called The Magician's Nephew. And there's a portion in the book where it's kind of like the beginning of the world of Narnia. It's kind of like a example of the beginning of our world. It's very much like it's kind of like an allegory. A synopsis.
It's is a vision of the world happening.
it's pretty much the tale of the beginning of the world to the end of the world, and how the Bible has shown that to be true. And it's like Bible history, but in a story format where it's a completely separate world from us,
Right.
but we're seeing it physically.
Right.
If that makes sense. Well, anyway, the main character's mom is very sick and is going to die, and they know of this garden that's being very, very well guarded,
Right.
which is symbolizing the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And we know about some of the garden's fruits, which are things like, the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, the fruit of eternity, and how plentiful this garden was. But he didn't want them to... God didn't say not to touch the fruit of eternity. He said not to touch the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
Be mindful of that just when you're reading the Bible. Be mindful of that. But C.S. Lewis had this idea that if God literally had fruit that had those capabilities, then he probably had fruit that were healing and this and that. And so in his garden there were those things too.
Yeah.
But the garden was guarded at this point. And the lady who in the book represented the devil kept tempting this person, saying, the Creator doesn't want you to be able to have these gifts. He doesn't want you to be able to have the ability to save your mom. He's the enemy. But I can help you get in and get what you actually need.
Yeah, evil does exist.
And it's twisted because obviously God has no desire. But pretty much as he's trying to break in, Aslan, which is representing God, confronts him. And of course he has been told that this is a massive lion that is ravenous and mean and without mercy and super unfair and just destroy. It kind of like doesn't want anything to disrupt his territory. And my friend is laying out this scene and reading it in front of the whole congregation, reading a book that's not the Bible, but it's pretty interesting allegory to the question of why. Because the main character in this, it's written to say, as I fall to his feet, I start to sob, and I'm weeping for mercy, asking only for my mother, saying that I would never touch his land and touch his gifts had it not been for the unfairness that is happening to his mother. His mother doesn't deserve to be sick. His mother doesn't need this. And he said he would start lifting his eyes and make it to his paws and then drop his gaze because the paws were as big as his head and he knew he could be crushed at any moment.
Right.
Then when it didn't happen, he kept begging and he would lift up and reach to about his chest, and he realized that this lion's chest is about as tall as he is, and then until all of a sudden, after several times of looking up and kept pleading, he realizes that he's not hearing growling. He can't tell what's going on, but he's hearing this deepness coming from inside the lion, and when he finally looks up, the lion is sobbing. And all he can say is, it was never meant to be this way, my child. It was never meant to be this way.
Right.
And in the end, the lion jumps in, I think, and gets the fruit and brings it out. Because the reason why the garden's guarded is because she would have trashed it.
Right. Right.
She would have went for the eternity and then trashed it.
Right.
Or I don't remember how it ends. Maybe she does. I don't remember. But it's nasty. It's nasty how the enemy will make you distort your image of God based off of what it's doing.
Right.
It makes you shadow your blame with the God that never meant it for it to be this way.
Right.
But because we were so consumed with our grief, the devil's using our grief and abusing it to get his will done.
Yeah.
And how our grief, though justified, though God even weeps with us, it can be used against him because the devil knows how to abuse our emotions. And when our emotions are raging, bad things happen, whether it be with anger, sadness, even happiness.
Right.
If we're so much involved in how we feel and how much we want to feel a certain way or get out of feeling, we tend to sometimes not follow God's ways of handling it because it seems way too prim.
Right.
And without our choice, and so we end up taking the devil's option, which ends up hurting people, including ourselves.
Right.
And it's just one of those things where it was never meant to be this way. It was never meant to be this way. God does not want us to suffer.
Yeah, he didn't build the world with evil in it, but evil does exist now.
So it's just one of those things. If any of you are dealing with grief or dealing with loss, especially during COVID time, where whether it be by COVID or not be, because even without it being about COVID, dealing with how hospitals have to maintain a certain strict code of how many people are able to visit, it's different, it's hard, it's not fun. And if you have any questions, if you have anything that you might want to add or have thoughts on based off of what I've said or what she has said, you're more than welcome to email us with the email down in the description below or on the comment section. Please, no negative words. We understand that not everyone believes in what we believe in. We're not trying to push a narrative. This is just what has helped comfort us in this time. Helped. These are the answers that we have come to understand and help us patch with our grief and our loss. And knowing that we will see her again. And just being grateful and being able to have these things that help us think about her. And just being grateful that this channel would never be here had we not had her in our life. That would have taught us and introduced us to the love of the yarn crafts. And this last week, part of the reason these things have gotten done so quickly is because I've been needing as a distraction. And these have been happening just as much as the blankets. It's just... we have options. We have healthy alternatives to curb our grief.
Yes.
And we are thankful for yarn. We are thankful for the crochet hook, for the knitting hook, for the embroidery, for the sewing, for the quilting. We're grateful. We're just so grateful to God. We're grateful to the people that have passed on their
talents and their giftings to us.
And given us their time. And I am grateful that even if we didn't get to have as much time as we wish we had had with her, that we still had the time that we did.
Yes.
And just treasure the time you have with the people you love.
And make sure you tell them you love them when you've got the chance.
So we're cutting close to the time we would like to cut off to, so we're going to say goodbye. Again, we love you. We appreciate you hanging out with us. And as always, we hope that you stitch your way
to mental health.